Good morning. I'm Colin Johnson, the Anglican Archbishop of Toronto and Metropolitan of the Ecclesiastical Province of Ontario, and we have four panelists here today to talk about the Do the Math Challenge. The four of us are here to represent a cross-section of people across Ontario who are deeply concerned about the fact that the poorest people in our province simply don't have enough money to meet their basic needs, including the need for food. This problem around food security and food insecurity has harmful health effects. Ontario, as a wealthy society, I believe, can afford to help these people. We all support the immediate implementation of a $100 per month increase for every adult on social assistance in Ontario as a first step toward adequate incomes. In the longer term, we support revised social assistance rates based on actual living costs. I'm here representing the Anglican Diocese of Toronto with about 80,000 members in this region. The issue of poverty is anything but abstract for our church members who literally help tens of thousands of people meet their basic needs for food, shelter, clothing, and other basic needs. The poor are real individuals whom we know by name. We have helped in this past year about 78,000 people in food banks in the Diocese of Toronto. We've provided in excess of 24,000 bed nights for out of the cold programs and other shelters. We're glad to help these people who often come to us in desperate circumstances. Helping them and getting to know them reflects our Christian values that everyone deserves to live a life in dignity. Yet we are painfully aware that what we're doing is just not enough. Band-aid treatments are not sufficient. You have to move to policy changes. In fact, it's nowhere near enough. So many people are simply struggling to get by. And as a society, we need to look at those policies that are keeping people trapped in poverty and how to get them out of poverty. And we need to respond, not just as individuals, but as a society, because we're all paying the price as a society for the enormous cost of poverty in so many ways, whether we acknowledge it or not. Thus, as Anglicans, we have been increasingly active in calling for action to counter poverty and homelessness. And that's why we enthusiastically support the Do the Math Challenge. I began this challenge diet this morning, joined by 4 other bishops in the diocese and more than 350 Anglicans in over 20 of our parishes across the diocese in taking part in this effort. And here's why we'd support it. First, part of the reason that poverty persists is because many people simply don't know of the hardships endured by low-income people. And by stepping into their shoes and their kitchen cupboards for 3 or 4 days, we can start to get a feel of what it's like to face that terrible choice between paying the rent or feeding your kids, or having to rely on food bank handouts. I looked at the list of food and I thought, there's lots of food here, but it's all carbohydrates. Secondly, growing numbers of health professionals are alarmed at the harmful health impacts of poverty, and especially by the fact that people simply cannot eat well on such a low diet. Living on a food bank diet, even for 3 days, will bring that reality to home. My wife chose not to do it because she's a commuter. Thirdly, as mentioned, we are in this campaign for the long haul, not the short haul. Part of this challenge is to hold a follow-up meeting to plan next steps, such as contacting our local MPPs, and our parish groups are already planning for these follow-up actions. And lastly, we simply do not accept the argument that we as a society cannot afford to take this step. It's a matter of choice, our choices. We live in an enormously wealthy society. Why can't we share that wealth more fairly and thus provide a basic standard of living for all? Other countries do it, And from our own religious tradition, it is one of the mandates that we have received, and not ours only, but from the Jewish and the Muslim traditions, the Hindu traditions, and many others. Doris Greenspun, president of the Registered Nurses Association of Ontario, and I wrote to each of the Ontario's party leaders and have asked them to go on this poverty diet with us during October at some point, and then to meet with them. We want to ask them if they still feel social assistance rates are adequate. We ask them to respond to us by today whether they'll accept this challenge, and I will be finding out later whether they have. Ultimately, this issue comes down to values. A core value for us is the basic dignity of every human being. It's part of the ancient Hebrew tradition of not gleaning right into the corners so that not every last morsel is harvested so that the poor could eat adequately. It's a story that Jesus taught about Lazarus and the poor man at his gate. It's about the sheep and the goats and going out and reaching out to those in need. In the Islamic tradition, it's about giving alms. If we respect that core value, then we will support, I believe, at least the $100 per month healthy food supplement as an affirmation of the dignity of every human being.